My next guest, the banker turned author Michael Lewis, has already deftly explained the 2008 U.S. financial meltdown in his book, The Big Short, and the grave economic crises in Iceland and Greece in terrific articles for Vanity Fair. He has another piece in the magazine that tackles the latest country on the verge of collapse, Ireland. Lewis is always fascinating on what's happening in the worlds of economics and high finance, and he joins me now. So let me start by asking you, suppose Vanity Fair were to give you an assignment and say, you know, you've gone to Greece, you've gone to Ireland, you've gone to Iceland. Now parachute into this country called the United States, 3 years after the economic crisis. How would you describe America?
The difference between the United States and these peripheral European countries is that it's big enough to absorb shocks. And the banking system here, as out of control as it was, never got nearly as big as it got in these places. In Ireland, for example, the three big banks have estimated losses of 106 billion euros. That's in a nation of 4 million people. If you scale it and translate it into dollars, $10 trillion in losses would be the equivalent here. I mean, that's so we don't face that.
I think we're in a different world. We're in a world with so many government stabilizers to the economy, unemployment insurance, and things like that. And perhaps the private sector also was able to respond, that it just never got to where the breadlines of the 1930s.
Well, that's true. Ben Bernanke knows things about financial crises that his predecessors did not know. And I think that's right. You put it very well. The government stabilizers are going to prevent the pain from being too acute. The price is, having stabilized the situation, you've reduced the sense of urgency about reforming the system. So you still have a system that's essentially broken. I mean, badly incentivized system, a system that was capable of total self-destruction, in which the incentives have not really changed.
At the heart of this crisis was the housing bubble. And if you go to California, the thing I'm wondering about is all those props are still in place. We still have the lowest interest rates possible, the lowest mortgage, a 30-year mortgage you can get. You still have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac pumping cash into the system. You still have the non-recourse loan. You can walk away from it. Aren't we just perpetuating the problem with housing? There have got to be a bubble somewhere.
It's very clear that there's reckoning in the future. Exactly what form it takes is less clear. I mean, it is incredible where we sit right now. If you told me in early 2009 that all these big Wall Street firms would be back even bigger and paying big bonuses and essentially socialized, and their losses socialized, but the gains privatized, and that the American people would put up with it, that's the incredible thing. Because the public policy was not to nationalize these firms and liquidate them, but to prop them up and make them even relatively more important in the economy. They were restored to power, they were subsidized to profitability, and they were able to use their influence to prevent political change. I mean, that's the first thing that stymied change was the political influence of the banks. The anger about the Wall Street bailouts, I think, is at the beginning of the Tea Party. I mean, the injustice of people being rewarded for failure and supported by the public purse. That was the source of the original outrage.
But it went in a libertarian direction rather than a kind of social, liberal direction.
It did. But a qualified libertarian direction, because a true libertarian would be outraged that these Wall Street banks are still being subsidized by the government. It doesn't seem to be any move on the right to remove those subsidies, not any serious one. And there's this free-floating anger now out there that just gets directed in all kinds of weird ways. It's in nobody's interest, really, to call attention to the original problem. So I think Wall Street got very lucky.